Okay, let's wrap this up. Final thoughts. It is an absolute must-have, absolute must-buy. Are you helping?
Hey guys, welcome back for another video. So this is a product review, but it occurred to me that there are going to be a lot of people that just have no idea what the product is, specifically why you would even need or want such a thing. So for those that need the information, I'm going to give you a really quick rundown here on bass and sub-bass and subwoofers and transducers and all that kind of good thing to explain why you would need or want a product such as this. For those of you already in the know, you can go ahead and skip below to the actual start of the product review. So this product is for transducers, and that's a broad term to mean things that are going to physically impact or shake your seats. And these have multiple uses. Number one, it's all for fun. Nobody actually needs transducers, but let me tell you what, if you experience it well set up, you're absolutely going to be hooked. I guarantee it. Every single person that I've had over, whether it's friends or family or strangers, and they've demoed certain scenes and movies and all that kind of good stuff with transducers. And I'm not talking about any specific transducers. I'm just talking about the effect of them and how they truly transform your enjoyment and your viewing of TV shows and movies. Every one of them comes away absolutely amazed. And I've definitely got some friends that have converted and now they're running them in their systems. So in a nutshell, any subwoofer out there, the most basic things, think, the $49 2.1 soundbar with subwoofer at Walmart, or computer speakers that often have a small subwoofer, anything like that is going to get down very nicely into the 50s, maybe even the 40s. I'm talking hertz. Sound is measured in hertz. That's cycles per second. Think the lower number, lower bass. And the entire sound spectrum is divided into terms that I'm sure all of you are familiar with at least the basics: treble, mid-range, and bass. The high notes, those are treble. Mid-range, think vocals. Bass, think low notes and impact and explosions and things like that. All right, very rudimentary. And then each one of those segments is further subdivided into many more. Speaking of just the bass segment, we have generally what's considered sub-bass, and there isn't a hard and fast rule about what number means this and cross the line and it means something else. Sub-bass, think things that you can feel. Regular bass, think notes that you can just hear, very broadly, okay? To get those visceral impacts, things you can feel pounding in your chest or shaking of your seats just from the subwoofers themselves, it takes air. It takes a lot of air. Now you can either have larger drivers, you can have more than one driver, you can have more than one subwoofer, you can have the subwoofer driver doing more work, moving back and forth further. All of these things will give you more bass. And if you want to reach those lower and lower segments, it takes more bass. It takes bigger, more bass. You reach a point where you are either running out of money or running out of space in your room because the cabinets have to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, or both. Transducers do two things. One, they can help bridge that gap because they're designed to be physical implementations. There is no consideration for space in your room. They go on or underneath your seats. You don't see them. They're not taking up any space in your room. And there are multiple different types. I'm not talking about any particular brand or type. The end result is always the same goal. You want to feel the bass without hearing it. Now, some people use transducers late at night and they turn off their subwoofers. So they still get some fun and excitement out of the movie or show that they're watching, but they're not disturbing other people in the house or neighbors. People like me just want them to simply extend what the subwoofers are doing. My subwoofers in my room are already going down very nicely into the low teens, 9, 10. That's about the max that I'm getting before it starts to roll off and it's very quiet. Now, below 20 hertz, you generally can't hear the bass. You can just feel it. So 20 and under is generally called the infrasonic bass. And transducers are really meant to shine in this particular segment. Now, all that being said, let's say you've got an awesome setup. You've got the best transducers out there. You've got awesome subwoofers. You're having a blast, right? Everything's set up. Everything's cool. What are you going to play? What out there actually has signal content in that range to begin with? Well, the short answer is, if you're talking from any streaming service or straight off a disc, hardly anything. That's the truth. Now, it didn't always used to be that way. And you may have noticed this yourself. If you've got an awesome system and you saw a particular movie that you really loved in the theater and you go home, some months pass, the disc comes out, right? You put that disc in and you listen to it and you're like, where'd the bass go? This is different than what was in the theater. Now, your first thought may have been, well, I don't have as good speakers or subwoofers that the theater had. The truth is that movie more than likely was altered for the home release, for the disc release, or the streaming release. And the bass was actually rolled off on purpose by whoever was in charge of mixing it. Now, there are multiple reasons why this is done. That information's not gone. When I say it's rolled off, it's not disappeared. It's just turned down in that extreme low bass region and sub-bass and infrasonic bass. We've had multiple reasons given by actual mixers in Hollywood. Some will say that, oh, well, a lot of people are just playing this back on TVs or tablets or cheap little sound bars, and they can never play this information in the first place, so we just roll it off. Others have said, well, we don't have really huge subwoofers in our mixing studio, so we just roll it off. We match what we're actually using. Lots of different reasons. And it's a fairly recent phenomenon, say in the last 10 years or so. Back when DVDs ruled and Blu-rays were just coming out, it was very common for those disc releases to be full range. And there are some fantastic examples, reference quality, demo quality. For example, Master and Commander. That is, to this day, a reference quality release. Now, there is no, as of the time of this video, it was just announced that it's coming out shortly, there is no 4K disc release. So right now, everyone is holding their breath to see, are they going to release the real version with all the bass, or are they going to roll it off like basically everything else out there? We'll have to see. So if you're playing one of those truly full range releases, yes, you can get everything that you've paid for. You can get all the performance out of your subs and your transducers as is. Now, what do you do if you're playing the probably 99% of the content out there that's been rolled off? Well, you got a couple options. One, you can use Easy BEQ, which is what I do. It's not straightforward. It's not a consumer product like this that you can just plug in and use. It takes a lot of other resources, and it's dependent on community involvement. It is a community-run project. So it's not something that is 100% future-proof, and it's not something that everyone can or even wants to do because it is technical, okay? This product is aiming to basically bring the enjoyment back out of any content out there by automatically detecting, hey, can we make the bass better for the transducers? Can we give you more exciting, more fun signal to play with? So that's the gist of this product. Now, they're not specifically doing this because the content has been rolled off, but the content being rolled off is why this product has to exist. That's the point I'm making. All right, let's get on with the review. Hey guys, welcome back for another video. So this is a really interesting product. It is a dedicated DSP box just for transducers. So your
Aura Pros, your bass shakers, your butt kickers, your Crosons, your Dayton Audio, your custom stuff using subwoofer drivers, all that kind of stuff. This is supposed to be really useful. I'm gonna unbox it real quick. We'll go through its features. Now, I've got a whole bunch of stuff planned. I want to see if it's got, here we go, the basics on the box. Just for transducers, it's got automatic calibration. That sounds pretty cool. On-the-fly processing, adjustable EQs and filters, a test signal generator, different presets. We got a remote. It's got some kind of sensor. So we're going to be able to actually measure what the transducers are doing. Inside the box, we have an online setup guide and user manual. And we have inside a little IR remote. Let's activate the battery. Just your basic little dome type remote. Barrel connection power brick. Here's the unit itself. It is all metal, quite hefty. It's about the size of a mini DSP 2x4 HD, which is what I use now. My system right now, by the way, is 2 PSA 3612 subs going through the mini DSP, and then one output from the mini DSP goes to my Crosons amp, and I run 4 Crosons on my main listening position seat. We've got stereo in and out, USB for some type of connection. We've got some type of LED screen. I wasn't sure from the box if it was a normal screen and it looked like that, but this is actually dots of LEDs. And it looks like some type of LED there. And I don't know, that's probably for the sensor, I would imagine. It looks like a TRS barrel jack. And some rubber feet on the bottom. And then we've got a couple of plastic pucks. So this must be the sensor. We do have some type of electronic sensor in the middle of this one, and this one just has a flat fill-in. These appear to be 3D printed kind of plastic pucks. Not a clue how they're used quite yet. And then there's the other TRS. That'll obviously plug into the front of the box there. Very interesting. All right, let me read through the manual. So the first thing in the manual are the different operations modes, and these are kind of like presets for the processing. Now, one thing that I'm going to be doing is directly comparing this to BEQ. I use Easy BEQ, which works on a Raspberry Pi and automatically sends signal to the mini DSP for my subs and transducers. Now, this is only meant for transducers, not subs. So I'm going to have a lot of different types of setup to go through and see what best use case it's for. Is it going to replace BEQ? Is it going to work in conjunction with it? Is it going to be completely different? Is it going to work for subs and transducers in some cases? Is it strictly for transducers? We're going to have to find out and run through everything. All right, so scanning through here, to say that this is a complicated setup is an understatement. Just looking at the various types of processing and combinations of processing and orders of operation that they want you to go through. What I'm going to do first is basically put this into a straightforward basic setup. I'm going to eliminate everything from my system that this is not meant for, like running BEQ or things like that. So I'm just going to put it into a plain Jane setup, and we'll go for if you just have a processor and your transducers and an amp. That's the basics for actually running them. We're going to plug this into the chain and then run it through and start from there. And I have to laugh because you're never going to guess how these are used. These go under your butt. They're actually butt sensors. You put these on your seat directly underneath where each of your butt cheeks go, and then you sit on these, and they will give you your readout for how your transducers are actually shaking your seats. That's actually simple and genius. I've seen some other ways where people are trying to use a phone app, which is basically a G sensor, and just laying your phone on the seat. And let me tell you, the results are, let's just say, not great at best. But this, basically pinching them and putting the real weight on them that you experience in the seat, and then not having any overshoot for the vibration. Again, simple and genius. So this is the actual sensor, basically a G sensor again, but captured is gonna let us know exactly what's going on. I'm really curious as to how that's gonna show my current system performs compared to everything else that I'm gonna be running through and what this can do for calibration. Very cool. Right now, I'm running a set of EQ curves in the mini DSP, not only for BEQ, but for the Crosons. I have a low pass filter, so they're not playing up too high. And I have a little bit of a kick to compensate for the extreme roll off down in the lower single digits of the particular Behringer amp that I use. And those theoretically are giving me a nice flat signal. And I have done a loop back to make sure that the EQ from my auto correction software isn't messing up way down low for my Crosons. But again, this is supposed to be calibrating all of that for you. So best case scenario, this system should be eliminating a ton of work that people do with transducers. So here we have it just powered on, first boot, haven't done a thing. I have read through all the material and I have to say, it's a quite complex setup. However, it's one of these things where once you get it set up the way you like it, the use is extremely simple and intuitive. And they have very good instructions, both written and video. I'll put a link down below to that page. It's the same thing that the scan code takes you to. They have solutions and hookups for virtually everybody, no matter what kind of system you've got, no matter what kind of configuration. They've got a way to get this in your signal chain. So take a look through that and you can get a real good feel for how you can use this in your particular setup. Now you might have to buy some cables, some adapters, Y splitters. I have to use a mic extension cable, but we'll get into all that, and that's going to depend on exactly what you need to do. The first thing I'm going to do before I actually use it is update the firmware. You can use a thumb drive, or what I'm using here, just a little micro SD card in a USB adapter, and we just plug it into the back, use the remote to turn it off and back on again, and we should see the display go to, I believe it said wait, and that will update itself over a couple minutes. Now, as far as the display goes, this is going to be a love it or hate it kind of thing. What you're seeing on the screen is very much what I see with my naked eye. There's not a lot of contrast between the unlit and lit LED dots here. So it's a little difficult to just glance at it and see what's being displayed. However, you're not actually using this all that much. It's basically just displaying codes. You'll have a function and a level. This is C0, for example. So you might bump it up to C1, C2, that kind of thing. So it's not like you're reading words or viewing a chart or anything detailed like that. So not a big deal. I actually really like the look of the display and the idea. It's cool. Now there are no hard controls at all on the device, so you have to use the remote for everything. To update the firmware, we need to put it into standby mode. That's done by first pressing the cancel button and then bypass. Not both at the same time, just that, then that. So now we're in standby mode and we can insert the thumb drive or micro SD in the adapter. And now we just turn it back on by pressing again the mute or cancel button. In this case, it's power. And you can see it booted normally. That means it is on the current firmware that I just had on the update device. Otherwise, it would go through and take a minute or so to update. So as far as where you physically put this in your signal chain, it's going to completely depend on your setup and what you want or need to get out of this box. If all you want is to control the EQ and the processing of your transducers, and that's it in this box, then you can put this absolutely anywhere upstream of your transducer amplifier. If you want to use the automatic calibration and setting the level and delays relative to your subs, then you'll need to pipe a subwoofer signal through this as well. Now in my system, I have 2 independent subs. For the purposes of testing this box, however, I'm dumbing it down just to a 1 subwoofer. So I will be piping it through here so I can show you everything it does. But just let me tell you what my setup is normally in relation. So I have 2 sub outputs coming from my processor. They go directly into a mini DSP 2x4 HD. That is setting my delay from my subs, specifically this one here, which is the furthest away, the most delayed in the system. And then the transducer output comes off of that. So the transducers are always negative delayed with the sub correctly, and then room correction or manual delays in the processor are set after that. So my mini DSP is just doing the delay. It's not doing any processing to the subs signal. It's there because I have offshot from that a Raspberry Pi running EasyBEQ. If you don't know about that, I'll put a link down below to all about that. And then I have an SVS wireless transceiver in the rack, and that comes out of the mini DSP transducer signal and goes to a receiver behind the seats here to my amp for the transducers, which are Crosons. So coincidentally, in the middle of the project, we've got some new firmware. I've got it loaded on my card here. I'm going to go through the same procedure that I showed you before, and the only difference will be on the display. We're going to see it go through the update process instead of nothing, meaning that firmware is current. So I'm going to shut it down into standby mode, leave the power connected, plug the drive in here with my card in it, and powering back on. Now it says wait. We've got that little dot moving across the bottom, and it's rebooting. And good to go. It took less than 1 minute. Okay, back to it. So just for the purposes of this video, I've got everything wired in. Obviously, this isn't where I would put it for permanent installation, but this is where my wires currently fit because I had to go from my mini DSP inputs and outputs into the back of this. So I can see the display here with my side panel off. And then once you have it physically connected, the instructions here online give you this page to go through and actually set all the functions in the device itself to match whatever configuration you have it wired up for. So I need to go through and make sure mine is set correctly for using the single sub out and then splitting to the sub and transducers amp. So looking at the connection guide here, inputs A and B are summed to mono, so it shouldn't matter if you're only using one, which one you plug into. Outputs, 1 go to your transducers and 2 passes through to your subwoofer. Now that can be optionally processed, which I'm going to do just so I can do the time alignment between the transducer and sub. And then if you have one of the later processors that actually has a dedicated transducer output, you can just use inputs A and B for that. So using the remote, I'm going to go into the menu, and then I'm going to go to the sub control, and then we can set the mode. Defaults to off, which means you just want this to be processing transducers alone. But if you want to tie in and do your sub delay, you have to choose one of these. You can either A and B, sum it to mono, which is what I'm going to do, or you can go separate, which is if you have the separate transducer output of your processor. So I'm going to save into A plus B and back to normal. So the next step is setting your input gain in the device itself so that your voltages match and you get the most output without any kind of clipping. And they use this really cool little video clip that's on a loop. There are multiple options here. I've downloaded the full file, put it on my Plex server so I can play it back that way. But if you can't do anything like that, they do give you options for streaming it even from a YouTube link. So when you're playing the file, it's got the instructions the same as on the web page up there, so you can read either. Basically, you set your system to the max volume that you watch your content at, and then during playback, this basically becomes a little bit of a volume meter. The 2 dots are where you want to be as a minimum. Right now it's at the default +0, so you just play back your clip and you make sure that you're at least exceeding that minimum. In my case, it well exceeds it at 0, so I won't have to do anything. I'm going to play it back real quick here so you can see what the display looks like. Now, I would imagine that most people won't ever have to do anything with the input gain because any modern receiver processor is going to be putting out a strong enough signal. So the next thing is to set our volume levels on the transducer amp itself. Now this is going to be really useful because it basically lets you gain match whatever amp you're using or whatever's in your signal chain. Now the instructions here are basically set the settings a certain way and then play back a worst case scenario scene at full volume and set this level to what feels good to you. Now that's how I do mine normally, and I'm just adjusting the gain on the amplifier itself or the level in the processor or the mini DSP, depends on your setup. So this is a by feel kind of thing. It's not a correct level or not. And also just to note, make sure that you cancel out and go back into normal operation before you move to the next step. I made the mistake of leaving it in the input level mode and then going on and trying the next step, and it doesn't have any output in that state. The next step is setting your delay, and this integrates, as they explain, the timing between what you feel in your transducers, no matter what kind you're using, and your subwoofer sound. You want both to arrive at you at the exact same time, and we do that by delaying it in the system. Now this is really cool. They give you a little test video here, and it's just a heartbeat. It's bump, 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 just on a loop. You can use anything with kick drums. That's really easy to do, but this is absolutely perfect. So it gives you the animation of it pumping, and then you can hear it through the sub, and you can feel it through the transducers. So what we do is just put it into delay mode, and then use the remote. And now we're going to use negative delay, which is delaying the subwoofer. And we use these 6 keys here, and they go in 1 millisecond increments, 5, and 10, just to make it quicker to go up or down. And what they suggest doing, and I completely agree, bump it all the way down to like -90. And that way you can definitely feel that it's wrong. And then start coming back towards 0, and you'll feel it getting more in sync. And there will be a point when you get to that perfect delay where it's just seamless. It just feels and sounds like you have the subwoofer, and that's it. You don't realize the transducers are there separately. That's in sync. And that's the critical step, I have to say, that most people are missing from their system, and why so many people online, they'll get their transducers, doesn't matter what they are, butt kickers, Dayton Audio, whatever, and they call them a gimmick because they're not in sync. When they are properly timed and they disappear from your system, that's the game-changing moment. So I'm going to go and do that now. I know what the value is that I arrived and I'm using in the mini DSP, and I'm curious to see how close this will get to get the same results. So in my system, it ended up being -10 to be in perfect sync. Now, most of that is because I'm going through the wireless system, the SVS Gen 2, going to my transducer amp. That alone adds, I think it was 7 or 8 milliseconds of delay. So if you're all wired, you're more than likely going to be even smaller than that. Now, interestingly, I was, what was I at? -12.7 on the mini DSP to get the same result. So what this is doing is eliminating the intrinsic delay in the mini DSP itself. So this has a lot less delay, or well, not a lot less, but about 3 milliseconds less delay inherent to the boxes themselves. But super easy to dial in, just took a couple seconds. One note, when you're changing the levels up or down, do it in between the heartbeat sounds, because if you actually adjust it while it's playing, my subwoofer was making crunchy noises because it's making a little pop noise. So either pause the video to make an adjustment or do it in between the beats. Now here's what I think is a really interesting part to those of us that have these systems and are really into it, the calibration. This may not be what you're thinking of. So what this is doing is kind of like room EQ, but for the seats. This is to take the effects of the physical seats out of the equation and give you what's supposed to be in the signal at your butt. So just like running room correction takes the effects of your room out of the equation and makes sure what you're hearing is supposed to be the nice level signal, That's what this is for. Now this is where you're probably going to need a cable, a headphone extension cable. And then once you plug it in, it automatically goes into the calibration mode. So here's a tip on how to position these. They're going to end up feeling like they're forward more than you think they really are, almost like they're underneath your thighs. What you want to do, remember the whole point is to squish this as much as possible and just measure what's coming through. Right now, while it's in this level mode, my crosons are just vibrating like crazy. And you can look on here on the level meter. As you position them better, I've got this raised up just so I can see it from the seat. When you see that plus, that means it's not getting enough signal. When you squish it enough and you get it in the right position, that level meter goes up. So you're getting good results. So just play around with the position under your legs, under your butt, until you get a real strong signal, and then you'll get a feel for how it needs to be positioned on the seat for the positions when you actually calibrate. After your third position is done, it goes back into regular mode, and you can unplug the calibration sensor. It's funny because it starts off in the ultra low frequencies and you just feel it, and then it quickly sweeps way above what you actually use transducers for, and you hear all the different parts of the seats ringing out. So this whole process is a bunch of trial and error. Unfortunately, because every seat is going to be different, you need to run through a bunch of different variables to get a good calibration result. And they detail everything that you need to do, every setting that you need to test back and forth. But the gist of it is you're going to measure in 3 different positions. And the important thing is you're not sitting in the seat normally. The entire point of this is to squish the sensor between the seat and your butt, putting as much weight down on it and staying as still as possible. But you're not sitting in this like you would be normally. You want to sit straight up and put all your weight straight down on the sensors. I mean, if you had like a 200-pound sack, you could just put that on the sensor, right? But it's easier just to use yourself and just measure 3 different positions, a few inches apart, just to eliminate anything weird in one particular spot in the seat. And throughout the whole process, it's going to measure the response and then give you different results. But after you do that, you want to go back and change different parameters one at a time, redo the calibration, and then test again to see what you think feels the best. So now we can actually see what the system did as far as the calibration before and after. We just put it into standby and insert a blank thumb drive or SD card again, and it will copy down some files. Let's take a look. Opening the file here in Photoshop, you can see the orange is the before and the blue is the after. Now you can see exactly why. It takes trial and error to get everything not only measuring right, but corrected right. In this particular run, you can see there's a big dip here between, I don't know, probably 7 and 12. But it did take off this resonant peak very nicely. That's from parts of the chair, and the cushion affects it, where it is in the cushion, how you're sitting on it affects it. You've just got to go through this multiple times until you get a good result. Now, this isn't something that everybody's going to want or need, but there is an internal sine wave generator to the transducer outputs, so you can use that to test and tweak however you need to. And at this point, they note that if you're satisfied with the results, you're done. But if you want to tweak further, they give you lots of tips and tricks on things that you can adjust to get different results, including how just the input level can vary the output results. Now, very interestingly, I'm using a test scene I'm very familiar with for demoing and setting up transducers, the Fury Tiger Tank battle scene. I don't have BEQ running. I'm not doing anything. In fact, the mini DSP is unplugged, no power to it whatsoever. The other sub is turned off. I'm getting really similar feel in this without BEQ, which means the content in the movie isn't modified. It's rolled off as it comes on the disc, and it's feeling really good. So I've got my levels to a place I'm very happy with. So now I'm going to move on and play with its processing features. So the next section is all about personal preference. What they give you are 3 preset modes here that are locked into what they do. And there's also 3 custom presets where you can program them to be anything you like. Now, as far as the differences, you can think of cinema as normal. You can adjust all the parameters however you like, and it's not doing anything special. Music rolls in the bass extender, and I'll tell you the details about each of these settings in a bit. Rolls in bass extender automatically, and you can't turn it off. Gaming is a little more dynamic, so it's adjusting the punch and doing things differently to where the effects are rolling in. I'm betting that for movies and TV shows, everybody's going to be using cinema. And as far as how you set everything, it's going to completely depend on your system and how it's operating. The parameters we can play with are low cut, gain, wet dry, and bass extender. Some of these should be self-explanatory. Gain is the level. Low cut is the filter. You probably aren't going to want those on unless you've got some really weak transducers and you just need to roll it off because maybe they're clanking. Wet dry is a little hard to describe in words, and luckily they give you some test videos here so you can dial it up and down while you play this on a loop and actually feel what it's doing. Bass extender is the really cool thing. That is basically what BEQ or Easy BEQ does. As far as filling in the low information that transducers really specialize in that are missing in virtually all the content out there. Now, BEQ, I don't think I explained this earlier, but what it does is, like I said, it's community driven. We analyze the movies, we see where it's been filtered off, and then we introduce filters to undo it. And that goes into the mini DSP. So you basically have all of your content back as if the movie wasn't rolled off to begin with. Best case scenario. Bass extender here is doing sort of the same thing automatically. Now, it doesn't raise the volume by any set amount or anything like that, but what it's doing is analyzing it. It sees that there's missing information, and it also takes the upper bass that's already in the track and generates new bass to fill in where your transducers are working. So you can play with that not only on and off, but different levels. And all the different combinations are going to play into your specific seats, your transducers, and your whole system. So it is all trial and error, personal preference. And if you end up wanting to use this with BEQ, it's super easy. Instead of outputting directly to the sub, you just get another RCA cable and output into the mini DSP. And then you're right back to the way you were, but this is now controlling your transducers, and it's got its own delay to the sub. So while you still could do it in the mini DSP, this is going to give you tools to figure it out really quick. That being said, I doubt if you're using this, you would be using BEQ, unless you've got a really custom setup. Because the whole point of this is to use the information up higher in the bass where the levels are good to create better levels down below just for the transducers. And BEQ already has the information there. For each of the settings, except gain, that's self-explanatory, they give you test files to play, and you simply play them, dial each one, follow the instructions on screen. These are also on the screen as they're playing, and you feel exactly what's going on, and you figure out exactly what feels good to you. After you're done with that, play test scenes of your content. Now, if you want a really good scene for testing everything out and going through your calibration and tweaking and all that, fire up the disc version of Underworld Awakening. Go to the end fight. I'll put the timestamp of it down. I don't recall off the top of my head, but it's right here when they start to fight. From here forward, just about 4 minutes. You get all kinds of signal in the level, and this is one of the rare discs that is not filtered off, so it is full range. Okay, let's wrap this up. Final thoughts. It is an absolute must-have, absolute must-buy. Are you helping? For anybody with transducers that does not have BEQ. I'll talk about BEQ more in a second here because obviously some people that have BEQ are going to be very interested in, hey, can this help my experience? But overall, super easy. Once you get it dialed in, you're never going to be without it. You're never going to want to run your transducers not tweaked with this because it just adds so much more content and enjoyment to your movies, especially things that are full range. Now, even running this full range, where arguably it's not doing a lot, it still adds a layer. And here's the cool thing. You've got the bypass button right on the remote. So when you're in doubt of, hey, what did that setting really do, or what's it doing in this particular scene, you just press it. Now, what it does is just give you the unfiltered sub signal. So it's not only turning off all the processing it's doing, but it's feeding you a signal that's way too high for the transducers themselves. So don't be surprised when you're feeling things that you're not even meant to with transducers. But pay attention to the lower parts when it turned off the processing, what the differences are. So it makes it super easy to dial in. I'll also note that the test clips that they give you for testing the different parameters, it does make it very easy to dial those in, but the overall effect, you have to play real content, because the difference in real content with those settings on or off or at different levels is much more natural and much easier to gauge. So definitely go back and forth in there, but use the test clips to train your mind as to what they're doing, not specifically the end results for the settings that you want. Use real content for that. Now, the big question, if you already have BEQ, is this something that you want to add to your system? The answer is maybe. It is going to completely depend on your setup, like so many other things with this product. In my case, man, I'm not convinced yet if I'm going to keep it in the loop or not. Because what it doesn't do is specifically add the low content that is different than the higher base content. That's what BEQ does. And you're not going to get a lot of specific things in a lot of specific scenes without BEQ. That's all there is to it. But would you want to run this in conjunction? Maybe, because the more content that is there, the less it's doing. But it does make a difference, even on this scene here. And the BEQ for this isn't doing a whole heck of a lot. So again, it's going to be, you got to plug it in. You got to try it. You got to see. But it's not a cut and dry answer like I can give you if you don't have BEQ. If you're not running BEQ and you have transducers, buy this right now. That's it. Just put this video down, go to their website, and buy it. You will thank me, because it is that cool. It is as big of a difference as going to BEQ from not having BEQ. Seriously, in all content. It is really easy, and it is seamless. I can tell the difference between the real content and what this is producing, but only because I've run BEQ. If you never did before, it's just plain awesome. Full stop. So there you go. Hope this helps. Got any questions about it? I'll try to answer them in the comments. But any technical stuff, definitely hit up the company. They've got awesome support, and their instructions, their video, and the stuff I walked you through on the screen there, man, top notch. I've never seen instructions for a product like this or anything close to it done better. They did a fantastic job. So that's it. Say goodbye, Cooper. Say goodbye, Clover. We'll see you guys next time.